Before we begin, I wanted to provide a content warning for this conversation, which may include discussion of torture, anti-Muslim violence by the state and military and police forces, sexual violence, and kidnapping. Our program includes individuals and attendees who have been directly targeted and impacted by this violence. So I'll turn it back over to Mubashira.
Thank you. So Nancy, my first question is for you. Let's talk about the legal apparatus in Guantanamo because it's not your standard US judicial system. We're 19 years out and still in pre-trial phases for a handful of those who've been charged. Can you set the scene in terms of the legal parameters around Guantanamo and how the court system there differs from the US judicial process?
Yes, I can talk about it. The main thing to say about the court process, first of all, Mohamedou was never charged in the military commissions, so that part never had any impact on him. But it's not a legal system that comports with any of the standards of the United States justice system. For example, the current version of the military commission, and it has changed so much that one judge actually said, I don't know how to figure out what's happening because it always changes. But for example, one of the fundamental rights in the United States is the right to confrontation. May not be a right in other countries, but it's one of ours, except it's not a right in the military commissions. The right to a speedy trial, not a right to the military commissions. The right if you're convicted to have the time that you've spent in custody apply, so that if you get a 20-year sentence and you've been in custody for 15 years, then you really only have a 5-year sentence, doesn't apply. And I could go on and on with that. It's not a court. The habeas system has which Mohamedou won his habeas case in 2010, the judge ordered him released, but that system too has milled about. At first, the prisoners, including Mohamedou, filed petitions for habeas corpus, and the Military Commission Act said, well, they can't. They're not on American soil. They have no right to habeas. Then the law changed and they agreed that they have the right to file, but not to get anywhere. In other words, you could file, but it wouldn't mean anything. Finally, in 2008, the Supreme Court decided a case known as Mohamedian, which was obviously a detainee's name, and said that the prisoners in Guantanamo, called detainees because they haven't been charged, I call them prisoners, had the right to habeas and had the right to go into federal court for their habeas. So Mohamedou hand-wrote a habeas, and then a habeas petition was filed in 2005, but from 2005 to 2008, nothing happened. Finally, we got the government's response, government's factual return in 2008. He won that case in 2010. However, the Obama administration, which said, I want to close Guantanamo, the Justice Department under the Obama administration appealed almost every single habeas case that the prisoners won in the district court. I think it was 1 or 2 juveniles that they didn't appeal. So we ended up in front of the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, the Federal Court of Appeals, and that court did not reverse it, fortunately, but did send it back, remanded it to the district court, and that gets complicated why they did that. But the bottom line is the district court never heard it again. And so Mohamedou stayed there until 2016, when an entirely different procedure called the Periodic Review Board, not a court, 6 intelligence agents from 6 different intelligence agencies that we were not allowed to know, decided unanimously that Mohamedou did not pose a significant threat to the United States or its allies, and therefore he could be released, and that's how he got out. So it's complicated, but I think that sets the scene.
Very complicated. Thank you for that. Mohamedou, my next question is to you. Can you describe to us what it first felt like meeting Nancy? You had been imprisoned already for 4 years after going on a horrendous world tour of terror with countless interrogations and enduring unspeakable torture. What made you agree to work with her as your attorney?
I mean, when Nancy came to Guantanamo Bay in June of 2005, at that point in time, I had nothing to lose. I mean, I already signed the false confession and I had nothing to lose. I could only get better. And she was the first person, civilian person, you know, aside from the Red Cross who visited me, you know. And that was like a very good feeling. And I instantly my life and with my case. And I was right. I was right all along, you know. But, you know, this, unfortunately, Guantanamo Bay is not designed for the law. It was designed to circumvent the rule of law, to go away. And they just want to turn lawyers who defend us into just like human rights activists. They just like, they only ask the government, because the government, this rule of law can only function when the government participates in it. Ahmed, Ahmed, تعال قول لي.
I've got another question, and this is a two-part question for both Mohamedou and Nancy. And so Mohamedou, I'll ask you first. You know, from our research, each of the 780 individuals detained at Guantanamo shared one thing in common, being Muslim. And one of the central themes of your book and in the movie, Mohamedou, is your faith and how it gave you hope and strength during a truly horrific time period. But it was also faith itself, the fact that every person was, and the 3 men who remain, is Muslim. And that singled out these individuals for imprisonment. So how did your faith help you during your unjust and illegal imprisonment? And then after Mohamedou goes, Nancy, you worked on numerous cases involving the government's targeting of Muslims and Muslim organizations. What impact has state-sponsored Islamophobia had on the rule of law? So Mohamedou, I'll hand that over to you first.
So I will start with the bad news. To be perfectly honest with everybody, and I owe people to be honest with them. You know, we have a saying, the scout never lies, because people send you to scout for them. And my faith was very shaken, you know, and because when I grew up, my grandmother taught me that if you do good things, then good things happen to you. If you do bad things, then bad things happen to you. It was very simple equation that I very well understood. But my in Guantanamo Bay showed me that life is not that simple. You may do good things and bad things happen to you. And you may do bad things and apparent good things happen to you. And that was very, very hard on me. And I mean, we now know on record that in 2005, at least since 2005, the US government knows that I was in any hostilities against them. But yet they coldly kept me, you know? But there is something, you know, like in the Islamic faith, and my understanding is shared by a lot of faith, by Christian faith, Jewish faith, and other philosophies around the world is forgiveness. You know, I was just free. I didn't have any resentment. I could do my prayer and I could do my meditation, you know, totally free. And I was happy. And one of the things that always Guantanamo employees told me, why are you so happy all the time? And my answer was consistently because I wanted my humiliation to be as cheap as possible.
Thank you for that. Nancy, I'll hand that over to you now.
Well, two things. It's in the movie, and if you see the movie, you see that you hear the sound of prayer, the call to prayer, which in fact was Mohamedou singing the call to prayer, by the way, in the movie. And Jody, as me, asks him if he wants her to step outside, and he says no. And she says, why aren't you praying? And in fact, we had that conversation. Usually Mohamedou would, when it was time to pray, because I was there all day, when it was time to pray, he would turn the television up higher and go into the corner where he prayed. And I would use that time, if possible, to go out to the latrines, which were far away, but we drank tea all day. So I needed those little times out and used the time when he was praying. But when he didn't pray and I asked him why, I knew there was something wrong. And what he said was, it's difficult to have faith here. And that's when I knew he was depressed and I was concerned about him at those moments, because we had long years when nothing was happening. As to the second part of your question, I represented Mr. Damra, I represented the Holy Land Foundation, the largest Muslim charity in the US. I represent Shukri Abu Bakr, who was the CEO, and I have a current client who doesn't need any more publicity, so I won't say his name. But his case involved nothing to do with terrorism, nothing to do with any of it. We could have won. I mean, it had to do with jewelry. We could have, I believe, won his case at trial. And yet, I said to him and to my co-counsel, so it was a family, so we were all working together, I don't think we can go to trial because there will be some juror who will say, they're making a lot of money, I wonder where it's going, and then we'll lose. And that's the truth. In the Holy Land case, we won a mistrial, and then the government came back, used things that were incorrect under the law, prejudicial. The Court of Appeals found in our favor and on all of them, but then said, well, it's, there's enough evidence that we don't need these anyway, these things that happened. And that's because they were Muslim, again. So at this point, can a Muslim man or woman get a fair trial in the United States? I don't know that it's possible. That's my answer.
So Nancy, I have another question for you. There's a part in the movie where you get access to the government documents that you've been asking for, but they've all been redacted. Even the prosecution didn't have access to that original intelligence. And no one has the full story due to all of the red tape and the government secrecy. Even in Mohamedou's own memoir, there are significant redactions, pages. Can you describe what it was like to build a case when you aren't even given access to the information that you need and rightfully should be given? And how did you navigate this legal black hole?
It's hard to navigate a legal black hole, and it happens in all my national security cases. There are instances, and there were in Mohamedou's case, for example, when we got a notice of an ex parte, meaning the other side and the prosecution, or in this case, it was a civil case, but it was like a prosecution. And the judge had a conversation. And we said, what was it about? Well, we can't tell you. Well, we can't know anything about it? No. Finally, the judge got irritated and said, at least give the defense an idea of like what we might be talking about. But we never really knew. A lot of things were redacted. A lot of information wasn't available to us. As you know, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Couch had to fight to get it. And it's what we call the circumstances documents. Under what circumstances were these confessions made? You see in the movie, Ramzi Ben Al-Shib, who is in fact, that's the real name of one of the 9/11 defendants in Guantanamo. And you see what he says about Mohamedou, those statements that kept Mohamedou in prison for a long time. And yet we were never able to get the circumstances documents for Ramzi Ben Al-Shib, even though we knew he had been tortured in the black sites. Ultimately, the government just decided not to use any of his statements because they couldn't use them if we couldn't get the circumstances. But we had to continuously fight to get more and more discovery. It was a constant fight. And did we all ever get it all? No. But Mohamedou got out, and that's all that matters to me.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah for that. Thank goodness for that. So this is a question for both Mohamedou and Nancy. So due to how slow the legal process is at Guantanamo, there were years where nothing was happening in Mohamedou's case. What was that like? Maybe some stories you could share?
You want me to start? Or do you want Mohamedou to start?
Mohamedou, if you want to start, if that's okay with you. Oh, you're on mute.
In the Quran, we have a verse that says that طال عليهم الأمد. It's been a very long time since they heard any good news. And this is very indicative of the way the United States of America deals with its constitution. The Constitution of the United States, I learned in prison that it talks about speedy trial and the accused being faced with evidence against him. I think it says him in the Constitution. And so nothing like that is happening. I mean, not even in the United States of America. And the Constitution, it seems, is drowned with rules that the Constitution, can you imagine that the people who wrote that document thought that 20 years is still speedy trial? You stay 20 years in prison waiting on your trial, that's still okay. In my case, 14 years, 15, more than 15 years, because people discount when the United States kidnapped me from Mauritania, from Senegal, even from Senegal, and put me under house arrest in Mauritania. And to be honest, I want to be very honest, this very idea that United people who are not United States citizens do not deserve human dignity is downright fascism, because and it's violate the very laws, the very laws to which the United States is signatory. And I can tell you that the very last I saw from my mother, and I mean, I don't know how many of you have kids, but seeing your kids taken away from you and you can do nothing. And it's not like the police came to me and said, we have arrest warrant. They came to us in civilian clothes. They said someone, the United States of America called them to kidnap me. And as I drove away with them, I could see my mother, in the rear view mirror, until she disappeared as I turned right forever. I never saw her again. I never get to pray on her. I never get to go to the funerals. I never to be with my family. Nothing like that. This is the extent of the law and this respect to human dignity and human rights. Mind you, I didn't do anything against your country. Nothing. Nothing at all, you know. And it's very frustrating and it needs to stop. This exception that people from this part of the world, i.e. North Africa and the Middle East, do not deserve human dignity and do not deserve to be treated. You talk about human cost, you know. I lost my brother and I lost my mother in prison. And people, some of my co-detainees lost their lives while under torture. Very much in this is the role that people from this part of the world don't deserve to be treated within the rule of law need to stop, because this is one of the main cause for violence, what you guys call in your home violent extremism, you know. And I always laugh at this, you know, enemy combatant. Who is going to combat you if they are not your enemy? And I wasn't enemy combatant. I know I didn't fight anyone, but enemy combatant, yes. If one is fighting someone, they are their enemy. And I really don't understand this or this whole enhanced interrogation technique, you know, this euphemism.
So you asked for some stories during those times. Mohamedou's told you how hard, answered the second half of your question. So I'll tell you some. Guantanamo is not like a regular prison. For those of you who are criminal defense lawyers, you will know that you get permission to see your client, you fly in, or you drive there, whatever, you see your client for an hour or two, you discuss the case, you make sure the client's okay, is he getting the medicine he needs, et cetera, and then you leave. And that's how you see a client in every prison in the United States and in other countries. I've seen clients in England and Poland, and it's always the same. It's different in Guantanamo. And it was different for me and one other client, but that was an unusual situation. This one is different because you fly in on Monday morning and you fly out on Thursday or Friday. You have no choice. It's not like you can say, well, I'm done now. And I think I'll leave on Tuesday or Wednesday. It doesn't happen. You come in, you go out when the flights go. Originally, it was something called Air Sunshine, but all their planes got decommissioned, which will tell you something about how dangerous they were. Then we flew on C-130s for a while, which was horrible. And then finally, the government started chartering planes and we'd fly on those. But we had, during the first years, between 2005 and 2008, we filed a FOIA request, which this talks about in the movie, Freedom of Information request. And that got us a lot of information, particularly Mohamedou's medical records, which proved that he did have broken ribs and that the interrogators were using his medical records against him, putting him in positions that the medical doctor said he shouldn't be in because he had a pre-existing back injury. And later, when people tried to get those, they were classified. So we were lucky to get them early. So we had that period of time. From 2008 to 2010, we really worked on the case. Then from 2011 till 2016, again, we were doing things. We were filing motions for discovery and all kinds of things. I read the things that Mohamedou wrote, including the beginnings of the book, Ahmed and Zarga. But Mohamedou, nothing was happening in his case. So we would, Terry Duncan, who was my co-counsel, she and I would go every other month. I'd go and then she'd go and then I'd go and then she'd go. so that we could spread them out and see him, because we also couldn't have phone calls. He didn't have any family visits. So we had long days together. What did we do? We watched TV, whatever TV they allowed him, and that changed during the years. You know, for a while, he had whatever they could get for free, which was a Venezuelan station, an Iranian station, and a Russian station. Go figure. We were not allowed to talk about current events, but he was getting them all day long. In fact, when his book was published, RT, Russian TV, wanted to interview me and Larry. We were in London going from one interview to another. And the publicist said, well, we don't usually put people on Russian TV, RT. And I said, yeah, but we have to, because I know Mohamedou sees it. And so Larry and I went there, and I said to Larry, this has got to be the best interviews we do. And sure enough, Mohamedou is sick. Of course, we can't communicate with him, right? And Mohamedou is in prison, and he sees over the top of this trailer coming, you know, Mohamedou Ould Slahi has written this book, Guantánamo Diary, and he sees it over, and that's, you know, it's like CNN, RT, they play the same thing over and over. And he got to see me and Larry while he was in prison. He couldn't even have his own book there, by the way. Finally, they agreed that if I got a copy of the book without the footnotes, without the introduction, they would let me bring it in. And that's because I kind of made friends with the privilege team, because they really liked what Mohamedou was doing. And so we got to bring it in, and Mohamedou and I got to laugh at it. We had a great time reading it. But other things would happen. For example, I've told the story of one day, I don't know how we got into it, but we started talking about the uncertainty principle, and Heisenberg, who was working for the Nazis, and nobody really knows whether he figured out what to do, how to make a bomb, and just didn't do it, or whether he never figured it out. But in any event, he discovered something called the uncertainty principle. And Mohamedou is an engineer, and I've always been interested in math. So we talked about it. And meanwhile, Mohamedou always is writing or drawing when you're talking to him. His hand is always going. And he starts writing these equations. So when I got ready to leave, I said, I don't know what to do about those. And I don't think you should have them. And he said, well, I don't think you should take them out either. So we decided, he said, I'll deal with it. I have no idea what he did. Maybe he ate them. I don't know what he did. Flushed them down the toilet. But it was things like that. Mohamedou would also attempt to convert me to Islam. And we always had very fun conversations about that. He taught me about Islam, and I learned a lot about it. And you know, why I said, why do Muslims pray 5 times a day? I heard that it's supposed to be 50 times, and then he explained that to me. And a lot of stuff. We just talked and entertained each other. And we went there to make sure he was okay, so he wouldn't be alone all the time. We couldn't go any more than that. We went as often as we could. And it was a very strange time, frankly, all those years, because I had no idea if we would ever get him out. All I knew was that I would be with him. We wouldn't desert him. Terry said she would not desert him. Terry was my associate then. She's now a death penalty lawyer, very accomplished lawyer. She was much younger then. And that was our commitment. And it's still my commitment to Mohamedou.
Thank you. And some of what you both brought up in your most recent response kind of dovetails into this next question, which is for both of you again. So in many ways, the Guantanamo Bay military prison, which some have described as a concentration camp, is an exceptional site of US violence. In many ways too, it really isn't. You know, one of the interrogators at Guantanamo, Richard Zuley, was a Chicago police detective who interrogated and tortured predominantly Black Americans in Chicago. And Zuley went on to become a military interrogator at Guantanamo, utilizing those same techniques that he had developed in Chicago. And unfortunately, Mohamedou, I know you know him, you know. would you both be able to speak to the similarities and continuity of police and prison violence in the US and military and prison violence in Guantanamo? And how, this past year, how has COVID-19 exacerbated these injustices? And I will ask if you can keep your responses brief because we are running into time.
Let me start that because I know about Chicago. I lived in Chicago. I wrote a book about Chicago. Yes, there was a whole group of cops who did this and used brutal force to get confessions. They didn't care who confessed. They just wanted to solve their crimes. Zuli was one of them. In the movie, he's Captain Collins, which is what he was in Guantanamo. So many of us believe that what happened in the United States and went to Guantanamo was then a testing ground for the CIA black sites. That's really what happened. And you asked me something else, and now I don't remember what the other thing was. Oh, what's happening now? What's happening under COVID is just horrible because, again, prisoners aren't being treated with human dignity. People don't want to give them any of the vaccines. They don't even want to give the 40 prisoners in Guantanamo vaccines. And one of the congressmen said, well, those should go to people in the US. I mean, come on, we're talking about 40 people. And in many places, including New Mexico, where my office is, the prisoners have gotten sick at very high proportions, and so have the guards, which anyone would realize. And then it goes back to the family and back to grandma. So prisons in the United States are dreadful places to this day. They're not Guantanamo. In some ways they're better, and in some ways they're worse.
Mohamedou, is there anything you want to add?
Chris, for the question. I vividly remember the first day I saw Richard Zuli. You know, I was being interrogated by Staff Sergeant Mary. And it was a good day. You know, she was like in somber mood, but she was like trying to smile. I didn't know why. And usually she doesn't allow me to the bathroom. It's one of the techniques. Humiliate you because they want you to pee on your clothes during interrogation. And this day I asked her to go to the bathroom. She said, yes, you can. As I came back from the bathroom, they sat me. And I saw like people in the room, new people, like two new people, like him and escort with him. And they sat me in front of them. And I was like trying to break the ice. Always like it's falling on me. I was like, oh, so many people. I don't know why I said that. And then he was very stern and very serious. No laughing, no sense of humor. He handed me a letter. In that letter, he said that the United States is going to arrest my mother and put her in general population. And he said they cannot like ensure her safety, insinuating that she would be raped. At that point in time, I knew I had nothing to lose. So, and I was very scared. And he kept like that I would admit my crimes were also in the letter. Millennium Plot and 9/11, two very horrific crimes, you know. And I was like, this is not fair, or something like this. He said, we're not looking for justice or fairness. We want to save lives, you know. These big things, everything, destroying lives to save lives. And I never forget him, you know, and using his vocabulary he told me when they tortured me in that boat ride, he came back to me and said, I told you not to. It was one of his wisdom sentences that also stuck in my head. Those people worked outside the law. They had no gloves. And I hope Jean still is listening to us. In the, in the security forces, in the security apparatus of the United States, some people who are on very high places, they have this obsession with dictatorships. They told me this many times. Look at those militaries. They don't need laws. They don't need any of these things. If you do bad things, they take you to prison, get down and dirty, torture you, and save lives. Ironically, those very restrictions that a country of law impose upon the police, the one that saves lives, the one that saves dignity and make the country prosper. And without those gloves and without these laws, without those restrictions, look at us, where we are.
Thank you, Mohamedou, for that. So we have approached Q&A time. I'm going to incorporate one of the questions that we had gotten from one of our attendees into one that we wanted to ask you, so it goes well together. We've noticed in Bridge's research that just because someone is released from Guantanamo doesn't necessarily mean they're completely free. And just on Monday, we heard that Lutfi bin Ali, who was imprisoned at Guantanamo for 13 years, passed away after suffering from long-term medical conditions and the restrictions placed on former Guantanamo prisoners after their release. So Mohamedou, I wanted to, get your input on this. What was life like after your release, and what limitations did you have to deal with, even though you've been released from Guantanamo?
There is this CIA agent, I met him the first time in Bagram. And the reason why I met him, why he was assigned to me, was because he spoke German. And my English was very limited. I couldn't carry on a conversation, and I couldn't understand what you guys say, especially Americans. Very hard to understand, and so they asked me what I spoke. I said like German. And everybody was like, look, this is not everyday language. And then the CIA brought a guy, his name Mishael. And he spoke with me in German, and I responded, and he told them, my German is perfect, something like that. And he looked at me, he told me, Wahrheit macht frei, meaning truth will set you free. And when he said that, my heart dropped, because it reminded me of those signs during World War II that says that Arbeit macht, meaning that work will set you free. And I knew that work did not set those human beings free. And so he was telling me that once America said, I'm guilty, I am guilty, and there is no changing it. And he is right. After so many years of investigation, America found cleanness, but I did not travel to any Western countries. I tried to visit my family in Germany. I was denied. I tried to go promote my movies in the UK. I was denied. And I do believe that this is a very big betrayal to the United States of America. Yes, the United Kingdom should not support America in its violation of human rights. Germany must not support the United States in its violation of human rights, because American people are good people and they don't deserve Guantanamo Bay. I met American people by and large, conservative, liberals, in between. They are by and large very good people, and they are very generous, and they love freedom and they love dignity. And I don't think that encouraging the United States to violate human rights is a good American.
Thank you, Mohamedou. I'm going to ask, next question is from Dr. Nazia Ghazi. And she says, today Americans carry what I call the Trump syndrome. And they see the Trump presidency as some kind of garish, un-American anomaly, as a uniquely violent or racist period in American history. But then the existence of the detention center at Guantanamo and the terror wars of Bush and Obama are forgotten under the Trump syndrome. What would both of the panelists say to those Americans who see the Trump's presidency as uniquely bad? And I think, Mohamedou, if you wanted to respond to this as well, you could touch on, you've recently mentioned in an interview about how the Canadian government played a massive role in you being detained in Guantanamo. Nancy, if you wanted to start, please go ahead.
I'll do this quickly, but the United States is a dangerous place for many people, beginning in its beginnings. The United States began by killing Indians, by ethnic cleansing, which was known as Manifest Destiny. Then the United States also began with slaves who were not given the right to be even full people until after the Civil War. The history of violence in this country is not unique to Trump. We saw it come out in the open partly because of the way he talked, but the US has military personnel on the ground in approximately 150 countries out of the 200 or so in the world. It's a country based on the military, and when the Constitution said that you know, all men, whatever the exact words were, everyone is to be free and have human dignity, it meant men who had property and who were Christian, and not even all Christians, just Protestants. So we have to go back a long way and see. Jody says in one of her interviews that we're getting better. I hope we are getting better. I think the world at large, although we don't seem to see it, is getting to be a more peaceful place, but we have more news about everything bad that happens. But, you know, Trump, look at Bush. Bush got us into wars. He started Guantanamo. He probably created ISIS by what he did. Trump didn't start any wars. He's a bad, vindictive, narcissistic person who should never have been president, but it was not unique. We just know more about it now.
Mohamedou, did you want to touch on, you know, the role Canada had played in targeting you, and which led to your imprisonment in Guantanamo?
Is this question for me?
Yes, this question's for you. The role that Canada and the Canadian security forces played in your eventually in you ending up detained at Guantanamo.
So, so look, مباشرة, very simply, the American, in my interrogation, they use scripts about my phone conversations that were illegally intercepted during my time in Canada and twisted. When I say cane sugar, they said I meant some kind of code, you know, very horrible stuff. And that's in my first confession, that I confessed that I didn't mean really tea and sugar when I really meant tea and sugar. And I wouldn't have been kidnapped if it wasn't for Canada. The state lured me outside of Canada and kidnapped me from Dakar. And I want to address this forgiveness. I repeat this, I forgive Canada, I forgive the US as government and as people. and I forgive Mauritania. You know, and this, I do it for myself. I want to free up the space in my head for good people in my life. And I don't think that anyone who harmed me need to suffer, because there is nothing for me if they suffer. If Richard Zuli, an old man, has cancer or goes to prison, I don't have any benefit from that. That's what I want Richard Zuli and all of the other to have a good life and very happy life. At least they wouldn't torture anyone, because if you're happy, you don't torture people. And you know, this forgiveness means to me freedom.
So we have one question from Dr. Remington Nevin, who is the founder of the Quinism Foundation, Quinism, Quinism. And Dr. Nevin is asking and would be very interested to ask Mohamedou if you have been made aware of the use of mefloquine, that anti-malarial drug, and if so, whether you believe you've suffered any ill effects from the drug, and if you were not personally affected, to your knowledge, if if there's anything that you know about its usage, and maybe if others have been affected by this drug.
Mohamedou seems to be frozen for a minute. Let me answer that. We did a lot of research on this and found no evidence that this drug was used on Mohamedou. People said that it was given to some of the prisoners when they first came, but we got his medical records, and I believe it would have been there because we got everything ultimately. I mean, the things that were redacted were people's names. So I don't have any evidence. We really looked for it, that it was used on Mohamedou.
Okay, well, we'll try to get in a few more questions. Thank you everyone for the participants. We've gotten so many questions. Nancy, this is from the Georgetown Moot Court team. When you argued Slahi's case, what were the main points you made? Did you argue that the enemy combatant label was unlawful, or that he should not have been labeled an enemy combatant in the first place?
When we went into the district court, the government, it was the government put on their case, and they had no witnesses. They simply, they did something very odd. They took Mohamedou's statements, what he had made, and the declaration that he made in this case, and it's not a criminal case, remember, so they could use his statements against him, and they would say, you said that such and such, and Mohamedou would say, yes, you said that. And finally, I mean, we could have objected, except that all they were asking him was what he said. And the judge finally stopped them and said, you're not getting anywhere here. Yes, he said those things. That's not the issue. The issue is, can you prove, because it was on the government's burden, to prove that he was a significant threat. And all the government had by that time, all they could rely on was that he joined Al-Qaeda in 1990 to 1992. The Millennium Plot was out. 9/11 was out. They knew they didn't have either of those. It's the only thing they had. And they tried to argue that he joined it and that he didn't leave. And, you know, I interjected at one point and said, I think we joined Al-Qaeda in 1990. We provided the Stinger missiles that they used against the Russians. The Mujahideen was Al-Qaeda. The US and Germany recruited people to go there. Ronald Reagan recruited Muslims to go. So it was meaningless. And ultimately the judge, of course, agreed. But that's really all they had. When the government appealed, it's really much more complicated. In the meantime, 3 cases had been heard that made it easier for the government to prove its case, basically. And the government said, the court said that that had to be applied to this case, and that the judge couldn't take each statement alone, but had to use what they called this matrix, and wanted the judge to find more facts. So it went back. We were prepared. We filed a lot of motions, but as I said, nothing else ever happened. And those cases are all up. I mean, anybody can find them in the courts in Washington.
Thank you, Nancy. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This has been really wonderful, and I see everyone's questions, and I'm sorry we won't be able to get to them. Thank you all so much for taking the time to have this very important conversation, and thank you to our viewers for joining us. Additionally, a big thank you to our Bridge team, Anam Anwar, Imrul Islam, and Nina Beecham, as well as our former Bridge interns, Emily Cernkovich and Beza Yazaja, who were integral to our Guantanamo data project. Do check it out on our website. We want to remind everyone that there are still 40 Muslim men imprisoned at Guantanamo. It's been over 19 years since the prison opened. There have been renewed efforts from human rights organizations, academics, and former Guantanamo prisoners calling on President Biden to shut down Guantanamo. To learn more about the 780 Muslim men and boys who have been detained at Guantanamo, be sure to check out our data project on our website. And we also have a series of fact sheets that provide an overview of the legal challenges, the human costs, the history, and the use of torture at Guantanamo. You can follow our panelists on Twitter. And additionally, please do check out Mohamedou's memoir, Guantánamo Diary, and his new book, The Actual True Story of Ahmed and Zarga. And The Mauritanian is out now. It just actually received 5 BAFTA nominations, and Jodie Foster won a Golden Globe for her part, and she played Nancy Hollander. So please, it's available to stream online, so please do go and watch. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Esposito for closing remarks.
Great, thank you. I want to thank Mohamedou and Nancy, and of course the Bridge team, and I'm delighted that Mubashara mentioned them, so that will shorten our time. And also Samantha Friedman and Morgan Kenrick from SXT Entertainment. And I would note that we had about 500 people, because remember, we're on Facebook as well as here for today. So I hope to see you all in the future, and I'll hold up your other book for people to see as well. This is a great read. It's not as thick and long as you might think. I'm not one of the best of readers, but it's really a great read. It's very engaging. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone.